How's it going? So on my ride the other day, I noticed that I had a small little wobble in my rear wheel. So I wanted to check it out. Maybe I can straighten my wheel up a little bit. So let's give this a little spin and see what it sounds like. So every once in a while you can hear it rubbing. And basically I set this little arm as close as I can just to hear the widest part of the wobble. So that's what we're going to try to get rid of first. And as the wheel becomes straighter and straighter, we'll move this arm closer and closer to the wheel. And this way we can slowly get rid of the wheel wobble until there's a nice even gap between the arm and the wheel. And there shouldn't be any rubbing. Let's work on that, getting that out. So right now I'm going to try to find the start of where it starts to become untrue and rub against the arm. So right here you can see the arm is touching the brake track, and that's what we're going to try to get rid of right now. So right there. So basically that means it's too far to the left because it's rubbing on the left arm. So we'll need a couple tools. The most basic tool you'll need is a little wrench. So this is a Park Tool little wrench, and it basically allows you to adjust the nipple that is attached to the spoke. Now there's on the rim there are two sides to the wheel. So right now you can see I have my cassette, so that's the drive side, and then on the non-drive side it also has spokes. So as you tighten one side, so if you're tightening the drivetrain side, it's going to pull the wheel to that side because you're making more tension, more force pulling the wheel to the left. At the same time, you can also loosen a spoke. It will release the tension from, let's say, the drivetrain side, and it will move the wheel to the opposite side. So right now that's what we want to do, is pull the rim back to the right. So we're going to start on where it was rubbing. Alright, so I found where it's rubbing. And now, when you're adjusting the spoke length, you're going to loosen or tighten each nipple that's attached to a spoke. So this is where it's rubbing. This spoke attached to the drive side is where it's rubbing. So I'm going to use my tool, and you have to make sure that you have the right size tool to the spoke. So it just so happens mine is size 0, and that's a pretty common size. So I always like to start truing a wheel by loosening a spoke first and then tightening the next spoke. This way the overall tension on the wheel stays the same, but you're not always adding tension to the wheel, and you're not always releasing tension. Since I use this wheel every day, I know that the tension is just about right for the overall wheel. So basically, this is where it's rubbing. So I'm on the drivetrain side. So I'm going to loosen the tension on this spoke, and this will move the rim away from the gauge here. So I'm only going to give it a half a turn. You want to go in very slight increments when you're making your adjustments. So just half a turns at a time. So I can see that spoke. It's still rubbing very slightly, but I'm going to keep moving on. I'm going to move to the next spoke because you don't want to isolate one spoke at a time, because you'll make that spoke really weak and then the two neighboring spokes really tight. So you want to make sure that all the spokes on each side of the wheel have the same tension. So I'm going to move to my next spoke. I can tell it's rubbing a little bit at that spoke, so I'm going to give it half a turn. and it's not rubbing. So just with those two quick little turns, where it was rubbing before, now there's a slight gap. Between the arm and the rim. So it's no longer rubbing. And there's still a slight wobble. But technically, if it's less than a millimeter, that's pretty darn good. Alright, so I made a few other quick little adjustments. So just remember when you're going to tighten a spoke, so you're going to shorten the length of the spoke, that makes more tension on the spoke. You want to turn the nipple clockwise. So you want to tighten the nut. So as you tighten the nut, it's going to bring the bolt in tighter, therefore making more tension. And then if you want to loosen the spoke, give more slack in the spoke, you want to loosen the nipple, so you want to turn it counterclockwise. So it's still righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. You know, righty-tighty, bringing more tension to the spoke, bringing the rim towards that side of the wheel. And then if you loosen the spoke, turning it counterclockwise, then you're going to do the opposite and move the wheel away from the side on which the spoke is on. So you're going to move the other direction. So now I've gone around my rim and it's nice and straight. There's a nice even gap around the rim. And then something you want to look out for is called wobble. Or you might put an egg shape in your rim by tightening your spokes. So basically that's the rim moving up and down. So this wheel is pretty good. But let's say you had the rim here wobbling up and down pretty excessively. What that means is that the tension in the nearby spokes is not quite aligned. So once you might have to bring that wobble, like if it's excessive, you want to minimize it, you'll need to tighten both neighboring spokes at the same time. So this way you're not undoing your trueness side to side, but you only want to change the rim by moving it inwards. So you need to do the two nearby spokes. So that should be one spoke from the left and one spoke from the right. So you can do this on the bike just for very basic truing, but I've got the nice Park tool stand, so that's TS 2.2, and this is a professional wheel truing stand. So basically that's just gonna hold your wheel nice and straight, and then you've got the nice adjustment here on the calipers to bring, based on your rim width, you can really fine tune the adjustability. And then also it's got a knob at the bottom to raise and adjust the height. So I've got a 700C tire, so it's about 29 inches in diameter. But if you're working on maybe a mountain bike, you might have a 16-inch wheel. So by turning the knob on the bottom here, you can true smaller size wheels all the way up to the kitty-sized wheels. And then another fun tool that I like to have is the Park Tool TM1. And basically it's a tension gauge for your spokes. So how this guy works, so on the left side you can see there's 3 little silver knobs. And the 2 bottom knobs you want to hook behind the spoke. And then the knob right in the middle is what you're going to use to tell your spoke tension. So you can see it moves as I release the black lever here. So you're going to pull it all the way up. You want to pull it all the way up. Set your spoke in the grooves. And there's actually a dotted line on where you should align the spoke, so that makes it real nice and easy. So pull the lever all the way up, set your spoke, and let it go. And then on this side, it's got a gauged value. So basically this is just a coefficient number, but to turn this into something we can relate to, they actually include a little chart. So you'll have to measure your spoke diameter, and then it comes with a really cool conversion chart. So I can say, okay, if my spoke is reading 15 on this gauge, I can go down to this chart, find 15, go over, and say, okay, this is 58 Newton meters, or kilograms of force. So it's pretty cool. It's nice to have. And basically, what I use it for is like a sanity check. So I'll use this and go around and check every spoke on this side and make sure that I'm within, one or two values as a whole. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side, go around and check every spoke and make sure that one spoke on the same side isn't really loose. For each side of the wheel, you want the tension to be the same. And usually the tension on the non-drive side is a lot looser because the spokes end up being longer. And then the tension on the inside of the wheel on the drive side, this side tends to be a lot tighter because the spoke no longer is coming from the outside to the rim. The inside of the spoke is actually much closer to the center. So this spoke is much shorter. So it ends up needing more tension to keep the wheel from going side to side because you've got all this space taken up by the cassette. So this is just a very basic review on how to true a wheel. Hope you enjoyed this video and hope you're getting out and riding. Be safe.